You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud, what women are actually talking about on Monday, the 26th of February. I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stevens. And Holly, that's a voice that sounds like it spent the weekend at Taylor Swift, but you didn't.
I didn't. I don't know why I'm getting a bit croaky. I did catch up with my best friend and we didn't stop talking for 3 days.
Yes. And so your voice has been under a lot of stress.
I was going to say you need to go on vocal rest, but maybe after the show.
Yes. But I'll do my best to get through this. On the show today, the tragic deaths of 2 young men and a community in mourning. Also, this is J-Lo, ellipses, ... now. But what is J-Lo now?
Now.
We will unpack it. Also, who the fuck did I marry? The woman who's turned her toxic relationship into 10 hours of viral video. But first, Mia.
In case you missed it, professional golfer Georgia Ball got some excellent advice from a stranger at a driving range this week about how to improve her swing technique. Was the man a professional golfer like Georgia is? No. Did Georgia ask for his advice? Also no. And yet, she happened to be videoing herself at the time as part of her practice, and so the incident was actually captured on video. And you can't see this while you're listening, but she's got a smile on her face, which is like, can you believe this is happening? Here's how it went down.
What you're doing there, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be right through, swing, follow through. Not, you're doing too slow on the way up and then back.
Okay, I'm going through a swing change at the minute. So,
in case those accents are a little hard.
They're Scousers, friends.
What
they
does
are
that mean?
From Liverpool in England. If you speak like that, you are a Scouser.
Okay. So what he says is what you're doing there is you're coming back too slow before delivering the killer line. I've been playing golf for 20 years. Ball then shot a look at the camera, which was very funny, and then he added, what you need to do is follow through a lot quicker than you're doing there. And then she sort of tried to do what I think every woman will recognise as when you just try to diffuse the situation and go, oh, thanks very much. I'm actually so fine. And she said, I've just been changing up my swing, so this is part of my process. And then he interrupts her again and reminds her that he's been playing golf for 20 years.
Oh, my God.
And he gives her some more tips. And then he offers some helpful encouragement. He says, keep doing that anyway. I think what a lucky little lady to be told by this kind gentleman what she's doing wrong and how she could improve.
So true. She should have just said, thank you, I cannot believe that you have given me the time of day when you've been playing for 20 years.
Correct.
Over the weekend, this video came up and I was sitting in a room with men and women, and every man in the room tried to convince me that this video wasn't real because they were like, you wouldn't speak
that
to
it was
a woman.
A setup to
that
make
it was
a point
setup.
About mansplaining.
Because she is wearing a microphone, but the reason she's wearing a microphone is because she's doing a coaching thing for her Instagram. Every woman in the room was like, oh no, that's a Tuesday. This is why I do not go to the gym. When I used to go to the gym and there were men around, multiple times you'd be doing a squat and you'd have a very helpful man. There's a particular type of man, not all men, particular type of man, who will corner you and explain that your knee placement isn't perfect over your ankles, and if you're trying to do this, then try blah. And the thing is, they're embarrassing you because you've not asked for their help, but you don't want to embarrass them. So you almost sit there encouraging them politely as they explain something to you. Because for this man, he had 2 data points. The first was that she was a woman, therefore she knew nothing about golf. The second is that she was young, therefore she really didn't know anything about golf. And I just love how wrong he was.
On both accounts,
yes, but every woman knows this feeling.
I think we should thank him because now we can mansplain mansplaining to a man just by showing them this video.
A really distressing story unfolded at the end of last week and over the weekend. 2 men, 26-year-old Jessie Baird and 29-year-old Luke Davies, were murdered in Sydney. A man who is understood to have briefly dated Baird has been charged with murdering the 2 men and has so far, at the time of recording, been uncooperative with assisting police with the recovery of their bodies. The alleged perpetrator was also a serving New South Wales police officer and is alleged to have used a police-issue service weapon to murder the 2 men. At the time of recording, there are many details we still don't know. This story is unfolding fast, so that might have changed by the time you listen to this. What we know is that Jessie told some friends and family that this man who he briefly dated had been exhibiting some worrying behaviours.
He talked about stalking, feeling like he'd been stalked.
Yeah, and these were not reported to police at the time, but have been since. Images of Jessie and Luke at a Pink concert last weekend show a happy couple who were in the early weeks of dating. Jessie was a Channel 10 reporter, previously working on Studio 10, so his face had once been broadcast on our television screens. And while Sydney newsrooms covered this story, it's important to note that many people in them knew and were friends with Jessie. We have staff here who knew and loved Jessie. It is not often that we see people reporting the news breaking down because they were friends with the victim, but this has happened over the weekend with both Narelda Jacobs and Sarah Harris. You can hear Harris pay tribute to a friend and colleague who, at 26 years old, had so much life left to live.
It's been a really hard week for a lot of us here at 10, right across the 10 network. Thanks, Rach. It's hard to even talk about Jessie in the past tense because Jessie, and I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here in the studio, across the newsroom and Studio 10 as well, but he was more than just a colleague. He was our friend. He was like a little brother. He was one of those kids that lit up not just the screen, but also a room.
One of the things that's really interesting about this point, about a large portion of the media's reaction to this story, is the media industry in a way is a small industry and people move around a lot. So as you've said, Jessie, we have people who work at Mamamia who are really good friends of Jessie's and who are obviously very distressed. But one of the really important points I think that reaction brings home, that's kind of a bit broader almost, is that every time we see the photograph of a victim of violence on our TV screens or on the homepage of a news site or on an Instagram reel, there is always a whole network of devastated people behind that image, family and friends and colleagues and former colleagues and anyone who's touched them, like who are just sort of stunned that this horror has stepped in and invaded and touched their lives. And I think in a way, you know, this has been very close to home for a lot of media people, and those are the people telling the story. But what that's a reminder of is that this sort of violence, it touches so many people.
It always ripples, and there are stories and anecdotes that exist for every person we see on the news and for, you know, one woman a week.
Yeah, they were people, they weren't a statistic.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have, you're right, because it feels like a big story within the media. It's getting a lot of coverage for a whole bunch of reasons, but it's just so tragic. It's so tragic.
One discussion that evolved over the weekend concerned the coverage of this case. Many in the queer community pointed out, firstly, the use of lovers describing Luke and Jessie rather than boyfriends, which was interesting. There were moments...
Do you mean the couple who were murdered?
The couple who were murdered.
Talked about them as lovers.
Yes. And there have been moments in this case where I think the media has been grappling with a queer story and probably made some real missteps in terms of how they cover it. So that's one that's been talked about. And secondly, this often happens, there has been significant focus on the alleged perpetrator, not least because of his proximity to celebrities. So before he was a police officer, he had a blog where he pursued celebrities, and there are photos being published of him with Miley Cyrus, Katy Perry, Harry Styles, and Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift is touring Australia, and there is a picture of her going around standing next to someone who allegedly just killed two men.
It's made it a very
tabloid friendly.
Yeah, a very media friendly story because there is no shortage of imagery. And what you might not know is that if there are a lot of available images of an accused or of a victim of a crime, you're going to see more of that because media organisations want that imagery. So you're seeing this guy everywhere you look with all these famous people, and it's elevating his profile.
And it's particularly galling, I think, for that reason. Mia, I want to ask you about the spotlight on the alleged perpetrator because we do have this discussion a bit. It happens in crimes all the time. We've chosen not to name him here. Is this just an attempt to understand how a man who lived among us could be capable of such a heinous crime? Do you think that's what's happening?
Yeah, without wanting to sound like I'm defensive of what the media is doing and how they choose to cover stories, speaking as someone who's a consumer of media, I always want to know what the perpetrator looked like, what their name was, what their story was. I want to understand more about the perpetrator, because I think in understanding senseless violence, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's mass shootings, murders, whatever it is, I'm interested in understanding, because I feel like what lessons can we learn, and also how can we better understand that these people do walk among us. And I don't know what you take away from that, but I think it underscores the point that no one is immune from domestic violence or senseless violence. People will say, and I really understand this perspective, you don't want to glorify them, you don't want to give them attention, you don't want to center them in the narrative. But I feel like there is an instructive nature that ultimately helps not just the people left behind and what we can learn about the future, but also hammering home that when we hear these stories and someone's like, oh, but he was always such a nice bloke. Yeah, nice people can do heinous, heinous things. And there are certain what appear to be red flags in this situation that could easily have been overlooked, because you could dismiss all of those kinds of behaviours. You know, this guy is on red carpets with celebrities, lots of selfies with celebrities. But then when you read a detail like the fact that last week the alleged perpetrator was behind the wheel of his car, you know, following Kourtney Kardashian and her husband who are here in Sydney, suddenly that doesn't look like someone who's just a celebrity fan, but it looks like something potentially more sinister and perhaps an indicator of a much more dangerous behaviour.
I agree. I think that's what some of these stories are getting to, that this man, it appears, stalked Jessie prior to this murder. And so his behaviour and seeming obsession with celebrities does seem to be an extension of that.
I do understand the frustration, though, with the alleged perpetrator in this case and many other cases appearing to suck up all the oxygen and all the attention. I mean, we don't know. It will all unfold in the court case that is undoubtedly coming. But it seems that notoriety was certainly something that this man was chasing. I don't mean necessarily in this particular instance, but generally in his life. He was an attention seeker, and I entirely understand when victims and supporters of victims are like, can we just stop
not
talking
give him the attention
about
that
the
he was
monsters?
craving,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly right. The other discussion is it's Pride Week. This weekend coming is Mardi Gras, and the Herald has actually posted an editorial saying they don't think it's appropriate for police to march in light of this violence. One of the front pages this weekend was, of course, this alleged perpetrator walking in Mardi Gras in his police uniform in February 2020. So that's why that imagery might be particularly confronting this year.
It's always been quite fraught, the police presence at Mardi Gras, because, of course, they're policing the event and trying to make sure everyone stays safe. But also LGBTQI members of the police force march along with people who are involved in outreach. I mean, you don't have to be part of the queer community. You have to be connected to the queer community, but there are people on floats that are involved in outreach programs, for example. And last year, Lydia Thorpe quite famously threw herself in front of the police presence in the parade, the float, you know, as a protest against police.
Well, one of the reasons that it's fraught is that the roots of Mardi Gras are actually also the roots of police brutality, because the original Mardi Gras, in inverted commas, not that it was called that then, of course, was a protest march in 1978 that was violently broken up by police. So it's always been seen as problematic from some sections of the community that the police are involved in it. It took them 20 years for them to start marching. And what the Herald wrote today, and it's interesting because it's an editorial, so it doesn't have a byline. It comes from the newspaper as their opinion and their comment.
And they do that quite rarely. Like, that's not something they do all the time.
They might do it sometimes to come out for a political party or a particular issue, but it is quite rare. But the context is also worth noting that it was only this weekend that the police commissioner, Karen Webb, had to stand up and make a statement about the fact that this recent inquiry into the police's handling of gay hate crimes over 40 years has found that it was very lacking, and that the police response to these violent crimes affecting the gay community was, and the quote is, sometimes indifferent, negligent, dismissive or hostile. So that has just happened on the back of this horrific murder allegedly perpetrated by a police officer. So what the Herald has written is they've said that they think that they should sit it out this year. The police officers who plan to march this year, the opinion read, should not be punished for the alleged sins of a colleague, but their presence would cause an additional layer of unnecessary heartache at a time when those who knew and loved Baird and Davies deserve to be together in a safe space. Sitting this year out would help diffuse an already inflamed situation that has become too raw for Sydney's LGBTQ community. A temporary stepping back, perhaps until next year, would be a helpful recognition of the pain currently weighing heavily on the community. It would be a sensible and sensitive thing to do.
I was really surprised to read that. And of course, the Herald acknowledged its own role and responsibility and guilt over what happened after the 78 protest, which is that they published the names of everybody that marched. And it's amazing to think about it, but back in 1978, a lot of those people were fired for being gay. So they basically outed those people. Many of them lost their jobs or had other repercussions. So they acknowledged that they also played a role for which they have apologised for. I think they apologised a number of years ago formally to the community and to the 78ers. I have to say I've been to a lot of Mardi Gras parades, and one of the most emotional floats is the original 78ers, and there are fewer and fewer of them every year. But it is a really solemn, beautiful, moving moment because you haven't always been allowed to march down Oxford Street as an openly gay person. And there are living people in our community who still remember that time.
I actually spoke to Nicholas Stewart, who is a partner at Australia's only out loud and proud LGBTI law firm. And he was one of the people who campaigned tirelessly for this inquiry to happen. So he's got a lot of background on it. And I asked him, assuming I would know his perspective, I thought he would say, I don't think they should march. I think they should stand down given the current situations. But he said, actually, I think they should still participate. We need them on side. He said, yes, you know, the inquiry is one thing, but they've handled the Baird and Davies investigation really well. He said the commissioner came to the Hate Crimes Memorial on Saturday morning, and we've just got to try and build a better relationship with the police force, because if we don't, then our lives are just going to be more difficult. So there are varied perspectives on this. And I think generally this is a moment to listen to the queer community. I don't think our opinions matter.
No.
I think it's about what the queer community want and what's going to make them feel the most safe and comfortable.
I know what they say about me. About hopeless romantics. That we're weak. And I'm not weak.
Changing gears, This Is Me Now is the most JLo thing that JLo has ever done.
I have to apologise, I just snorted. It's the best laugh I've had in a while. It's the ellipses, it's the now. It just always makes me laugh, sorry.
Because the reason that you pause is because it's This Is Me ... now. So if you ask me to describe what this was, I'm going to quote someone else who described it as the bonkers, star-studded musical biopic Fantasia mess that proves Jennifer Lopez can do whatever she wants. And
so it's
indeed she
actually
has.
on Prime Video now, isn't it? I watched it on the weekend.
You can watch it. So I made Holly watch it on the weekend. Jessie refused. So she's going to play the part of everyone listening who hasn't also watched it, because Jessie is a hero like that.
I have my first question.
Okay.
What is it?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it. Now, Outlouders, I've got it in my notes here to warn you about spoilers, but there are really no spoilers for This Is Me Now, a love story, because there is no plot except that JLo loves love.
Okay, is it a documentary? Is it a film? Is it a video clip? Please,
It is a fever dream wrapped in a riddle, tied up in a wedding dress.
It's like
with rose petals.
I realised as I got to the end of it that it's a visual album. But you know how like when Beyonce dropped a visual album for Lemonade, every song had a video, except this, it's kind of like a visual album, but then it's stitched together with, let's call it plot.
Okay, does she sing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And dance. A heap.
Is the music good?
No.
Oh, I thought it was. There were a couple in there I was bopping
And where do you
along
watch?
with.
Where did you watch this?
I watched it
On Prime.
a screen on Prime.
Okay.
It's part of a trifecta, right? The first part of the trifecta was the movie This Is Me now.
Yeah.
The new album is also out today, I think, in fact, or maybe a few days ago. Time is a construct, certainly in J-Lo's universe. So there's the album, which is also called This Is Me Now,
Yep.
a love story. And then next week, there's a documentary about the making
Oh
of
my goodness.
the movie This Is Me Now.
Is there a documentary about the making of the album?
hope
This
so.
Is Me.
I hope
There's a
so.
documentary about the making of the documentary.
So, a couple of notes before we get into
Do you want to explain the plot?
details. No, because there isn't one. But This Is Me Now, the movie, cost $20 million, which she funded herself. She also self-funded the album. And that would lead some to say it's the album and the movie that nobody asked for.
Because I heard whispers
Yes.
that she was advised not to make
by
this film.
everybody. So
Yes.
she did an interview either in Variety or The Hollywood Reporter a few weeks ago where she basically said everyone said don't do it. Ben said don't do it. Her agent said don't do it. Her manager said don't do it. No one funded it except for her, so clearly no one wanted it. And
Although
yet,
I'm sure her read of that is more, I wanted to own my own thing.
Yes,
which
that's
is a
exactly
thing that
right.
artists are doing more and more.
in part, it's a retort to everyone saying, J-Lo, she's been married so many times, she's had all these broken engagements. Why can't she just be by herself? So she plays a character who is J-Lo but is called the artist.
Although she's never referred to as such. But in the credits at the end, it says the artist, Jennifer Lopez.
The artist.
Is Ben in it?
Yes.
Yes.
But
Only a little bit.
So it starts with a tale about a luminous maiden. So it's kind of like this illustration about this ye-olde fable about this couple who are in love. They're doomed and they can't, so that one of them gets turned into a flower and the other one gets turned into a hummingbird, and the hummingbird is forever destined to go from flower to flower looking for his
True love.
True love. And so it's about yearning.
Okay.
It's about
That's universal.
yeah.
But
And then we
you know,
switch.
she's not selling it well. I could do a much better job. Man.
Then we switch to she's on a motorcycle, and it does seem like Ben Affleck's driving, but you can't actually see. But it's a Ben Affleck-like person. They're driving through a desert, really, but there's also water, so it's quite sci-fi. And then her heart is broken because they fly off the motorcycle, and then she's in a glass house with a guy who looks a little bit like her husband, Mark Anthony, and it starts off lovely, but then the house shatters, the house made of glass, and it shatters
What
like
a
a broken
visual.
heart.
He's abusive.
He's
Visual
abusive,
metaphor.
and that's awful. And then it jumps to her in a factory. I think it's a heart factory, or maybe the factory is her heart and it's a rose petal factory, but she's working in it like in Flashdance, like in the coal mines. And there's like some singing and dancing about what happens when the heart is actually broken.
You're selling it. I actually really want to watch this.
Then
It
she's
sounds
in
very
therapy.
dynamic and interesting.
Then she's in therapy, and all those things are dreams. And basically what we find out is the artist is addicted to love, trying to heal her heart. She marries all these guys. I liked that part.
Yeah. So there's this scene, it's not a scene, it's this phase of the film where she has these three interchangeable husbands. There's a wedding dress with a vaginal cutout
it's
in the
very
shape of a
exciting.
heart, which is very exciting. There's singing and dancing, and she's got these three different husbands. So it's basically she's marrying, and this represents all the different people that she's married, and her friends who are like the Greek chorus are just like, why does she keep getting married? The best part is then the other Greek chorus is the Zodiacal Council. So if you've seen in the trailer, it had all of these really interesting names that were in this movie. From
Really
Trevor
famous
Noah,
people.
Ben Affleck, Jane Fonda, Kiki Palmer, Post Malone, Sofia Vergara, some really interesting people. So they are all part of this Zodiacal Council who are looking down on J-Lo and sort of trying to give her advice.
Let's not give ourselves too much credit. We are the Zodiacal Council, but the stars hold all the power.
So, and
From
this is about the
above.
zodiac,
Yes.
like astrology.
So like Jane Fonda is Sagittarius, and
Of
she's
course she
she's
is.
the boss. But imagine Trevor Noah is in a ridiculous gold helmet, and they're all looking down on J-Lo getting married and everything, and they're all like, oh, what's the crazy girl doing now? How do we fix her? So the world is trying to help J-Lo rid herself of her love
Can you
addiction.
imagine you're Trevor Noah and your friend J-Lo says, Trev, will you be in my movie?
I know.
And he says, oh, I really don't want to do that, but I don't know how to say no to my friend. And the night before he's like, why did I say yes? Like, this is just a list of yes people who didn't know how to get out of this.
Weirdly, speaking of those people, Ben Affleck is in prosthetics as like a Donald Trump if he was a Fox News anchor, and he has this funny southern accent, and he weirdly is just in the background on the TV.
All the time, talking about love.
Loving yourself means never having to say, I'm lonely. It means old Rexy can go down to the lobby bar, order the oysters and a club soda, and go to bed smiling, even though the waitress was mean as a diabetic honey badger. Because only you can let the love in your heart die, and you should never let it die.
And then he's really in it at the very end, but that's a spoiler.
Well,
so basically the plot is love addict, which is obviously supposed to reflect J-Lo's real life, cures herself through therapy and self-love.
There's dancing in therapy.
Lots of dancing.
Is the dancing good?
Very good. But
she's a very
weird,
good dancer.
like wild, because one minute they're just talking and the next minute they're dancing. So it's a musical. It's like an hour-long
It's a musical. Like Hamilton.
Yeah, very unlike Hamilton. And she cures herself of her love addiction. And I think the whole point of this is it's supposed to be the story of her last 10 years. Because at the end, she's kind of like, 10 years, 3 divorces. Finally, I'm ready to be alone and stand in my truth and blah, blah. And that, of course, is when she finds love.
I have a question. Why?
Oh, there's a bit where she dances in the rain.
Why did
with a CGI hummingbird. She dances in the rain. She wears a lot of weird ballet flats in this, which is, it's an interesting choice. I'm used to seeing her in heels. She does like a Fred Astaire singing in the rain just by herself, but with a CGI hummingbird. It's very
So is this an attempt at album promotion?
It's bold.
It's a visual album stitched together with plot. J-Lo decided to make because clearly this is a major milestone moment for her in her career. But all anybody wants to talk about is how she, got Trevor Noah to wear a helmet in the Gadigal Council. And also, who makes an hour-long movie about themselves where the entire world is trying to guide their love choices?
So in a preview from the documentary, she's on the phone to Jane Fonda saying, hey, Jane, because they were in that movie Monster-in-Law together. So they've stayed friends, right? So she's like, Jane, will you be on the Zodiacal Council in my movie about my love story? And Jane's like, look, friend.
No.
I'm busy.
I am concerned. Why don't you just live your relationship instead of performing it?
Oh, Jane.
Like, Jane speaks truth to power.
Sagittarius, they are wise. They are wise.
So J-Lo just laughs and says, this is just what I do. And it's true. I mean, great artists. Beyonce famously made Lemonade about being cheated on by Jay-Z. Taylor Swift makes autobiographical albums. Like, lots of people do that, like creativity. We write first-person stories about things that have happened to us. You too write fiction informed by your own lives. And so here we are. And yet.
It's great.
What would you give it? Because I did look at some reviews and The Guardian gave it 2 and they weren't kind.
I feel like it needs its own scale because this is me now.
Yeah.
You can't compare it to anything else. It needs its own sort of spectrum of critical appraisal.
Let me paint a picture of, so I knew I had to watch this because I knew we were going to talk about it.
You do
and
your
also,
homework. I was like, fuck me, it's homework.
I like J-Lo. I'm usually team J-Lo. I have 2 friends visiting from England. They may be a little jet lagged. And anyway, we sat down on the couch and put it on the big TV. They were both asleep within 5 minutes. I was obviously, how long is it? Like, I actually quite enjoyed the music.
Did you?
But every time she started dancing, and she's very good and all that, I'm just like,
good.
What is it? Like, I just can't.
Very high production values.
Is it?
Was there harm involved?
No harm.
Was anyone harmed in the making of this?
But it's an
Could
interesting.
the money have been better spent on other things in the world? Yes.
Was good taste harmed? Maybe a little bit by the vagina dress, but I'm okay with that. And also the very overdrawn lip liner.
It's an interesting story, isn't it? We love the story of everyone said no to my manuscript.
Yeah.
But I'm J.K. Rowling, right? Sometimes you're not.
Yes.
Sometimes everyone said no because it's shit and it shouldn't exist in the world. And the problem is when you have a cheeky 20 mil to fund it yourself.
Yeah, look, it's her love story and her love legacy to Ben. It certainly puts quite a lot of pressure on things with them. And I don't know.
I can't imagine the ex-husbands are thrilled.
Look, we tell women to be more confident. This is someone with a lot of self-belief, and you have to respect that.
Out loud as I want you to have to do homework now because we had to do it. Go and watch it.
And live by the mantra, what would JLo do?
Yes.
What would she do?
Every Tuesday and Thursday, we drop new segments of Mamamia Out Loud just for Mamamia subscribers. Follow the link in the show notes to get your daily dose of Out Loud, and a big thank you to all our current subscribers.
Hi, and welcome. We all know why you're here. You're here for part of the new series that I'm calling Who the Fuck Did I Marry? I'm going to tell the story of how I met, dated, married, and divorced a real pathological liar. All right, part 11, part 26, part 45, Who the Fuck Did I Marry?
Okay, speaking of telling your own truth and exploring a love story, have you seen the words, who the fuck did I marry, or the name Risa Tisa all over your internet?
I have.
But I have not. I'm not across the story because I couldn't find 10 hours.
Let me help you out about this. Risa Tisa is a woman who lives in Georgia, USA. Mm-hmm. She is, by all accounts, probably really called Teresa McAvoy, but that might not be relevant to this story at all because who Risa Tisa is a storyteller for her generation. She is a woman who has uploaded, some say 7, some say 10 hours of content to TikTok, unpacking her toxic relationship in 52 videos. So 52 parts, so it's like part 1, part 2, and so on, right? And the video series is called Who the Fuck Did I Marry? Who she married is a man known only as Legion. She chose that name for him to tell the story, obviously, to protect his anonymity for legal reasons, I imagine, after the biblical man possessed by demons.
Oh, wow. She's so creative.
Very quick summary, no spoilers. Risa matches with Legion on 2 different dating apps. They talk. They agree to a first date. It's just before lockdown in America. It's just in the early days of COVID. On the way to the first date, her tire blows out. She calls Legion to come and help, and he does, and he helps her replace the tire, and he pays for it. And she's like, oh, my God, at last a lovely man. And they start dating proper. They are so into each other that a few weeks later, when Georgia goes into lockdown, they decide to move in together. Mm-hmm. At her 3-bedroomed house. And he starts covering rent and utilities at first, and she's like, it was amazing to not have to worry about that and all those things. Just a few things about Legion. He tells Risa that he's a manager at a major condiment company.
Ooh.
Vegemite? I don't think they have that in America.
Tomato sauce, maybe.
He tells Risa that he's made a small fortune, some $700,000, playing something called arena football. And now Google search spiked all over the world with what the hell's arena football. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. And they also, maybe he's an Apple IT support worker. Anyway, over the course of the next 12 months, they get pregnant. They have a miscarriage. She marries him. She finds out that he's a pathological liar who's lied about all those things. He doesn't really have a job. Every day she sees him talk to his brother on the phone and he's like, hey, Risa, say hi. Oh, my brother says hi for like an hour. He doesn't really have a brother. He doesn't have any money. He's always trying to get her to tell her that he's buying her this house, and she goes and she looks at it and she's so excited, and then it all falls apart. Same thing with cars and all these things. Eventually, she kicks him out. Now, the thing about these videos is it is almost impossible to overstate the level of detail. 52 episodes of all the detail of every house they ever looked at, everywhere they ever went. So much detail, and she has gone from being no one really to now having more than 3 million followers and everyone in the world knowing exactly who the fuck she married because they've gone and they've found him, they found her, they're obsessed with how much money she's making. It's now taking on a life of its own. I've been pondering a lot about what it means that the world is obsessed with the minutiae of one woman's terrible relationship, and I've landed at the realization that we are not as busy as we pretend that we are.
I saw the funniest videos over the weekend of people going about their weekend watching this or getting it up on their television, or their child saying to them, are you still watching that lady? Because they were up to part 49. One thing we've got to acknowledge is the enormous level of skill involved in what this woman is doing. Mm-hmm. You have to be a bloody good storyteller to hook people for this long.
Does it seem organic? Like, does it seem real? Because, of course, the conspiracy theorists will be going, it's all a marketing attempt to get a book deal.
Well,
and
it seems real because a lot of the videos are really quite boring. This is what I mean about the level of detail. Like if you were editing this, a bit like J-Lo's This Is Me now, if you were editing this, it would not be 10 hours long because I don't really need to know about like his sister's girlfriends, blah, blah, and the layout of the house. And that. So
it's stream of consciousness.
It feels like a story, like it's a well-told arc and clearly people were really engaged, but it's not how you would craft a story.
I think it was a perfect storm in that all of TikTok's features, such as the playlist feature, which means that once you watch a video, it automatically goes to the next one. She's met a moment of virality that people are going to just keep trying to sort of replicate, which they're not going to be able to.
She got kicked off TikTok for a bit, but now she's back.
She was also doing it very, very quickly. So she would go part 1 and then a few hours later it would be part 2. She wasn't making people wait. So she had this playlist going and going. And a lot of people said it was like listening to a very compelling audiobook. That was how they were doing it.
She wants it to be an audiobook. She wants you to listen to it as an audiobook.
As you're going about your day. And it's also this woman going about her day. She's doing her hair. She's in her kitchen. She's not even giving you her full attention. Now, she's made a lot of money off this. Some people are saying as much as $400,000 because when you have people sitting there giving that much of their time, you're making creator money, which I didn't know. I wouldn't have thought she'd made a cent from this. I assumed, she's going to get sponsorships or gifts or whatever, and she's been offered flights to London and Paris and all these places that she wanted to go. But I thought, looking at this, she's made more than a book deal, like a lot more than a book deal. But the difference is that there are no checks or balances. So that's what worries me about stories like this, is that she could have said partway through part 38, she could have named a child. She could have done something really defamatory or really hurtful or destroyed this man's life. She has this virality that you can never really turn off. That concerns me about the directness of this sort of storytelling. But it's like a back to Charles Dickens sharing things in chapters. It's a really unusual and new way to storytell.
Just in the name of checks and balances, here is a little bit of the guy, the so-called Legion man. So here's what he had to say in a TikTok video of his own.
I'm going to address the rumor, Risa Tisa ex-wife who straight lying to y'all. It's sad because it's completely false of everything. More to the point, I haven't decided who I'm going to talk to exactly or go on whose page or whatever. But I'm going to go ahead and let y'all know that she lied about everything. Follow her, don't follow her. That's up to you. All that stuff she said, it's complete lies.
Okay, so he's fishing for his own deal, which is, fair enough. But this
story will go on and on and on. She will be on every talk show, everything, and she'll get deals, and she'll be on Dancing with the Stars in 5 minutes, and then he will be, and he'll talk to everybody, and then this is just how you get famous.
So, well, my question is, are we entering a new age of monetizing bad relationships?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a bad thing?
Because I think the level of obsession with the minutiae of this woman's terrible relationship shows that we are obsessed with other people's relationships and hearing all about them. And whatever format that's in, it's like leaning in. And she's got so much goodwill from the people who've been listening to all of this. They're like, she should get that car and she should fly to Paris. And there's all these comments because she went into all this weedy detail about, I didn't make money on TikTok and then I did, but if you rewatch them, I'll make some more. And all these people are like, I'll rewatch them for you, Risa. Like, because she says she did it so women who've been fooled by men would feel seen.
But then how do we know any of this is true? And this is what I'm seeing on TikTok all the time. I get roped into a story and I get to the end and I go, that's some sort of old wives' tale. Like, that's something I've been hearing for years and years. And then I see someone else tell the same story. There's no way of verifying any of this. So does it matter whether this story is true or not? If it makes people feel seen, do the facts even matter?
No, because also I don't think that there will be very many women who've been doing the dating apps for a while who would find it particularly unlikely or unbelievable that you're going to stumble across an idiot like this guy. So I think that a lot of people are like, yes, me too. Not maybe at that level.
Yeah, but everyone's got their story.
I have a recommendation if you want just a funny, mindless film. I watched it on the weekend. It's called Theatre Camp. It's on Disney Plus, and It's kind of a mockumentary set at a theatre camp in upstate New York where Molly Gordon and Ben Platt play these two teachers who met at the camp years ago and became best friends. And then they've been working at the camp teaching music and teaching drama instead of following their own careers as actors and singers. And then the owner of the camp falls into a coma, and her son, who is like a bro who makes YouTube videos for entrepreneurs, but he's not very good, has to come in and sort of try and run the camp. It's just very funny. It's easy to watch. It's about all these eccentric staff at this rundown theatre camp. You know, the financial future of the camp's hanging in the balance. Apparently a lot of it was improvised. It's got a cast, a lot of whom you'll recognise, a lot of kids in it as well. It's just funny. When I first saw it come up on as a movie to watch, I thought it was like kind of more earnest and like it's a wacky, you know, comedy, but it's actually really funny. So it's more like The Office vibe.
Welcome, auditioners.
You guys are so talented, so unbelievable. This will break you. This will fully destroy you.
Congratulations on being the most talented kids at camp.
Starfish, jiggle like a jackal, jiggle like a jackal.
These are the things we can do with masks.
These people are really weird.
The visuals for it don't probably convey how it's this actually funny piss take, really. It's very funny.
Oh, I'm into that.
And if you love hearing our recommendations because they're amazing and you never want to miss out, the best way to get them is not to go into the Out Louders group and say, has anyone got a link to that blah, blah? It's just to sign up for our newsletter, which comes out every Friday in your inbox with links to everything we've recommended through the week, plus some behind-the-scenes gossip. We'll put a link to it in the show notes.
If you're looking for something else to listen to, the subscriber segment we did on Thursday, I reckon has started more conversations than about any subscriber segment we've done. Some people are up in arms. Yeah. Some people agree and think we're very wise. But what we discussed was different parenting styles, a theory about why certain people might go with certain parenting styles.
But also we talk about gentle parenting, and you have to basically pick a parenting style. You've decided you're at the start of this journey. The internet's told you you've got to pick a parenting style. Mm-hmm. Which one is it? Here's a little sneak peek.
There's a whole new slew of parenting styles, right? There's silky mums, there's crunchy mums, and there's scrunchy mums. So just guess, actually.
I know what crunchy is.
Yeah, crunchy is about like wellness, isn't it? Like you're kind of alternative.
And you make all your own baby food, and you know you had the breast milk cookies. Yeah, that's crunchy.
You wear a lot of linen, probably natural fibres, dress your kid in neutrals.
A link to that episode will be in the show notes.
Thank you for listening to us on Australia's #1 news and pop culture show. The episode was produced by Emeline Gazilas. The assistant producer is Tahli Blackman. And there's been audio production from Leah Porges, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shout out to any Mamamia subscribers listening. If you love the show and want to support us as well, subscribing to Mamamia is the very best way to do so. There is a link in the episode description.